Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Three Geeks Conversation. Today, we are joined by Michael Messner. How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
So, before the show started, you said that you appeared in Sudden Death briefly.
You can see me in some of the locker room scenes, and I have one Jean-Claude story because I see that you're a Jean-Claude a fan. We were shooting a scene in the locker room, and Jay Caulfield was the big tough guy for the Pittsburgh Penguins who was in the scene, and they wanted him to play one of the tougher looking dudes in the locker room. And Jean-Claude's in the locker room, and Jay Caulfield has his shirt off, and he is this massive, intimidating 6'4" person. And Jean-Claude is not that big, but he's just as ripped. So I saw him talking to the director for a second or two, Peter Himes, and he says, "Hey, can you have him put his shirt back on? He's making me look too small." So it didn't work. Peter Himes didn't go for it, but he also actually worked out at a gym I was at. He was just the nicest guy in the world, Jean-Claude was. So much love for Jean-Claude and the film Sudden Death with some very bad hockey players in it, including myself.
I'm going to have to rewatch and look for you. So you made a film, First Year Checking. I want to know, what's the background? What made this be the story that you wanted to tell?
I've been in hockey forever. I grew up playing hockey in Pittsburgh, and I went to Penn State and played there. And I currently work for Penn State's Division I hockey program, doing all their in-game entertainment, their social media videos. So I love hockey. So my kids kind of had no choice but to play hockey. It was going to be just my son playing, but Sidney Crosby had this thing where he gave away all kinds of free equipment. And my wife was like, "You're getting Cecilia in this as well." I was like, "Oh, sure. That sounds great." So my daughter and my son started playing hockey at a young age, and it was so much fun, and they loved it, and they grew so much. And then my daughter's older, and then the 12th to the 13th year, the game completely changes. It changes from, a non-checking, sweet, innocent game to this violent, kind of intimidating game, which there's a lot of benefits to. People think I'm this anti-check guy, but there's a lot of benefits to that. My daughter got so much confidence during it, but it's also incredibly dangerous. And two of the kids who were on Cecilia's team as we went through that year quit hockey completely. And I thought, that's not what you want to do. So when my son turned 2 years older and went into that year, I said, let's put a camera on him and see what happens for this first weekend or two. And sure enough, during the tryout weekend, one of the players got a concussion. And I said, all right, there's something here. There's something dangerous for these kids, but there's something that, there's something great about it too. It was a fascinating subject. So I turned the camera on my son for a year, God bless him, and came up with this.
What would be a good way to go about going from no checking to checking? Because checking is a big part of hockey, as you get older. What would be a good transition for that?
Well, there's a lot of studies on it, and they took it out at the younger ages, and they put it in right at this age, 12 and 13, where the testosterone is really starting to come into play or not come into play. So you have these 12-year-olds who are 70 pounds, 60 pounds, going up against these 13-year-olds, because it's a 12, 13-year-old kind of swing, who are 150 pounds, 160 pounds. And if they're mean and their testosterone is not doing the right thing that day, they can really injure other players. And if you're trying to grow a game needs help. And this game is going into different parts of the world. Columbus is huge now in hockey. Yeah. Los Angeles is huge. Dallas is huge. And if you're trying to grow that game, you're really shutting it down so the kids can't even start playing at 12 and 13, because you have to learn how to skate for a few years before you can be proficient and try to turn into a hockey player. It's just, there's so many things going on. They haven't looked at it and inspected it enough. So I said, all right, we're not going to drill down and give you numbers and all this baloney in this First Year Checking documentary. We're going to give you the emotion. We're going to give you exactly what my son's feeling and these other players on his team are feeling as they're going through it. Some of them thrive. some of them don't, and most of them will tell you that, you know, they were afraid, or so there's a mental anguish that also plays on these young men and women. That's a lot for them to get through while they're trying to still love a game and form friendships and bonds. So there's got to be a better way to protect them. And in the documentary, we see what Canada's doing and some other places are doing. And I've since found out a few other places even do some more interesting things. So who knows, maybe there'll be a part 2, because it seems to be getting a pretty good reception right now.
What was it like following your son for a year with a camera? Like, was dad brain like prevalent, or was it just like, I'm a documentarian for you right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Justin, it was tough because especially early, I've always coached him. So, and I was trying to step away from coaching him and have somebody else do it. But there was one instance that we filmed when it's in the checking clinic, and he gets absolutely smashed in the head, goes down on the ice. So there's 3 parts of me right there that are all like, what's going on? So I think actually filming it helped me stay back a little bit more. So I captured the shot. The coach was in there with him, checking on him. I'm not really making sure that he was okay. And then the dad and me wanted to go hug him, right? Say it's going to be okay. But the coach and me, I always say to my players, the first thing I say when they go down, right or wrong, is get up. And I scream at them, get up, just so that in their mind they can't sulk in it. It's like the kid who's crying once they fall down. What do? You know, do you pick them up right away, or do you mope and say, oh, it's the worst thing ever? So my reaction always be, get up and get going and get back in there. And at this point, I didn't get to do that because I had a camera. I would have looked like a fool. And he was on the ice, so it helped me kind of stay behind. But yeah, it wasn't fun in a lot of cases. But luckily, he came through pretty unscathed. But a lot of the other kids got some pretty good injuries.
What did he feel like having the camera on him all the time?
You ask him, and he'll tell you that it was a pain in the ass because I shot every moment because kids, and he's still a really shy, quiet person. So you have to roll. I mean, he would be okay on this podcast, but kids are really tough to get their true emotions and true feelings out of. So you have to shoot for hours and hours. And maybe he's just telling you his inner feelings just to get you away. But he really shared everything. There's not many kids that are going to say, I'm scared of this, or I felt, not many kids in this stage who all are trying to out-tough each other are going to actually admit, I'm really scared of this, and this guy is twice my size. This is really, mentally, it's draining me a little bit. So he did a really good job of opening up, and now that he's seen it, and there's other kids who are starting to go through this process who watch it, they are really appreciative because they have the same feelings, even though they're not going to voice them. Right. They have the same feelings. It's good for them to see a kid who has gone through this. So, there are a few talking heads in it, but I wanted the camera to be with you and have them. It's not really sit down interviews with Grace, and it's like, what are you feeling right now after you just got smashed? That kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of documentaries that I love, and I worked with an Academy Award-winning director, Alex Gibney, on a film that are a lot of the sit-down interviews. And I just wanted this to be mostly action, and the game is so beautiful. I tried to do as much on the ice as I could. And we were in Columbus to close out the last year, but Columbus had a kid on their team in our first checking game. His name was Nidal. You can look him up, and he had traps at 12 years old, and he was probably 150 pounds. And he's one of the top players in the country. He went up to a school called Bishop Kenny, but he walked in, and all of our kids were like, what is this? What have I gotten myself into? And that guy had so much room when he had the puck. He could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, I don't blame him at all. Give him wide berth. Yeah.
They absolutely annihilated us in that first game because we were so scared. And the next game we sort of caught up with them. But it is such a neat factor to watch these kids kind of overcome their fears or kind of know where to go and hide, where to retreat. So it was it's a fascinating experiment. So I guess it's not an experiment, it's real life. So
yeah.
It was fun to watch.
Have hockey parents or like fans kind of reacted the way you anticipated for the reception of the film? Like, I imagine parents are like, hey, this makes a lot of sense. I watched this as my kid growing up. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's a great question. And the coach that I work for at Penn State's named Guy Godowski. He is one of the best Division I hockey coaches there is. He's in the film, sort of giving his opinions on it. And he told me it is so honest and so real. And he has 2 kids who have just sort of recently gone through it. And he was really moved by how much Grayson shared, how much my wife kind of looks a little bit foolish in the film because she's really reaming out my son once or twice. And he was just really fascinated on how, we're just honest with it. Here's what it is. When he's crying, when my wife looks like a crazy person, even though she is, she's really unfairly cast as a crazy person in this film. But there are times when you're saying to your son, do you want to do this or don't you want to do it? And we, as parents, we all have that. And you think, is this the right time to push them or do you hug them? What do you do? So we caught her in a moment where she was really forcing him. And me as an editor, I put it in there and we watched it, and she's like, she's a middle school teacher. So she's pretty understanding, and she knows how to deal with kids, and she's done a great job with our 2 in my mind. So yeah, it's really an honest film, and that's the most satisfying thing that I heard, and feedback wise, and all the parents are like, you did a good job, you did a great job with our kids, you really didn't make them look foolish, but it was really honest, which is what we were going for.
So I was just thinking about this, and I have no idea if it's been done yet. The CTE thing in the NFL has been such a big talking point. Has that same study or similar studies been done for hockey, and maybe the impact of checking on said head trauma? You know what I mean?
The partner Barry Reese at our company, Awesome Films, and I did another film with this Academy Award-winning director. It was called The Last Gladiators, and it was on hockey fighters. And Chris Nyland was one of the fighters. But while we were shooting it, these fighters, some of them were committing suicide. Some of them were just going mental. There was, I think, 3 deaths right in a row while we were filming it. So it really killed our distribution, to be honest with you. NHL didn't want to give us rights for anything. It made it to Netflix and some other places, but it was, it is there. The NHL is deadly afraid of it. Yeah. USA Hockey, who is the governing body of youth hockey, should be deadly afraid of it, because we have someone from the Mayo Clinic. We went out to Minnesota and interviewed some people there, and she was like, this is a really terrible time to introduce body contact, because these brains are getting formed in this 12 to 15, 16-year-old age. And when you get hit, we don't know exactly what's happening. We don't know what the long-term repercussions are. And so they are really keeping a keen eye on it. And then you have the old guard who don't want to listen to USA Hockey, who say, all right, we're not even going to do USA Hockey. We're going to have our own governing body. Minnesota does this, where they start the checking at the very smallest age. So I'd like to, they just did that a couple years ago, and I'd like to look at them a little closer and say, does this work a little bit better?
Yeah.
Because are the kids, they're more malleable at that age, than a hit when you're, 5 or 6 is not like a hit when you're 13 and 12 and you're 100 pounds difference.
Right.
But, so there's something to that. But the other aspect that I didn't anticipate, my son is a really good stick handler. But when you stick handle at 12, your head can be completely down looking at that puck like this. And so what happens when you get that next year?
You're blindsided. Yeah, you're getting blindsided.
You get that checking click and you do it. You get absolutely murdered. And so it's a different game in that way too. So is it better to have the checking earlier and really govern it? One thing that I just learned last week, we were talking about, Quebec has a rule where there's the neutral zone in hockey, which is the center ice area. There's no checking allowed in that neutral zone in these young leagues, because that's where the big head-on collisions can happen. So they allow it in the corners when you're first starting, but not right away. And these kids, my son, as soon as you end your 12U year, you can go. So your year ends in May. In June, you can go in these travel teams and face off, at which this team did, and you'll see in the film, they went to Canada and they played the biggest, baddest team in Canada, and there are 3 kids who just get knocked completely out.
Yeah, I imagine,
because you just go from nothing to something, and it's it's scary. We need to keep a better eye on it, and hopefully this will shine a little bit light on it so USA Hockey takes a closer look. I'll show you something right here. I'm a referee now because I figured, that's one way to help the game out, and I'm trying to get out of coaching. But this is the rule book we just got. It's 21 to 25. So these are already the rules in place.
Yeah, that doesn't seem logical. In the future? Yeah, in the future?
They have all the rules all set for 4 straight years from now. It's like, what happens? There's all these studies that you need to do before you do that. But it's like 4 years. We're going to still keep the checking at 12. Doesn't matter. All these rules are going to be the same for 4 or 5 years. It's you're not looking enough at it. And we pay a lot of money. We pay $100 each every year, and there's 30,000 players. So the USA Hockey has a lot of money in there that they can do a little bit more studying on this checking than they really do. And they don't want to kind of put their eye on it.
Because it would probably potentially steer kids away from hockey, right? If it comes out that, hey, there's a lot of head trauma here, and we knew about it, but we didn't talk about it. Like, yeah.
Like what's happening in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm in Pittsburgh. You guys are in Columbus.
Yeah.
You see the youth numbers going down. They're picking other sports. So here's what Ontario, Canada did, which I think is a genius move. There's 3 levels of hockey: AAA, AA, single A. AAA is your higher level kids. AA and single A are good kids who could potentially get up to that level, but they're not there yet. So in Canada, at the AA and single A levels, there's no checking anywhere. You're not allowed to check.
That's a good idea. I like that.
You can't check until you're 18. And imagine, I was just at the rink the other day, and there's this kid trying to start to play hockey. He's 13 years old, barely can skate, and now he wants to play this game that he loves. There's not really a place for him. So
he's going to get killed. Yeah.
And if you ask the parents, you ask the kids, they won't really care. The AAA kids can go ahead and kill themselves, or play the right way and learn it the right way, and all have the same kind of skill level. Mm-hmm. Because my son's team was a AAA team. When I would watch the AA teams with these beginners, that's when you could really see kids just getting really vulnerable hits right to the head, going down to the ice. And they get up, they tell you they're okay, and they're back in the game. Yeah, it's hard.
Is that skill level gap a little wider in that second division? Because you could have someone that almost is on the cusp of that AAA team, and then someone almost on the cusp of the lower level team, right? The one, whichever the original one was, right?
Great question. Yeah. It's that way at AAA too. Like the top AAA kids are really good, but the bottom ones, you can change them out for any kid in AA.
Yeah,
really
fair enough.
So then at the bottom of AA, you can trade them out for any single A kids. And it's like, oh, this kid can barely walk on the ice. He's going 1 mile an hour. And, oh, God forbid he gets the puck.
Yeah.
He planted into the first row. And you see it all the time. You see it on these YouTube clips. You see it in the film, just people really, really being vulnerable. And one of the other things that USA Hockey does is they only have 2 referees at a lot of these Czech hockey games. And
that doesn't seem like enough. That does not seem like enough.
You think about the NHL, right? The Blue Jackets games, there's 4 guys out there. There's a guy watching from up top. So for us as coaches, we're supposed to be the ones who keeps an eye out for our kid if he gets hit in the head, because the referees are watching the game, offsides, penalties, parents yelling at them. They're watching everything else. So if a kid gets hit behind the play or during the play, you don't know if it gets hit in the head or not.
Right, yeah.
He comes to the bench and he tells you, oh, no, I didn't get hit in the head. Of course he's going to tell you that.
Yeah, every kid in America is going to be like, I want to keep playing.
Yeah. Yeah, put me back in. So the NHL has that other eye up top that says, no, it's too close. He got hit in the head. Get him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have anything like that in USA Hockey throughout the country. And you got to have something. You got to have something more than you do if you want to grow the game. You know, it seems like the NHL and hockey in general is always behind the other sports as far as where to go and what to do. And this is a chance to get ahead of it. Put another guy on the ice, have somebody in the stands. These parents are paying $60 to $75 an hour for private lessons for these kids, and we all do it like maniacs. We'll all spend an extra $2 or $5 a game for somebody in the stands to say, an objective person who says, you know what, that kid needs to be out.
Yeah.
There's something that we can do. It's not just, all right, put 2 refs out there and let them try to watch everything. And it's the coach's discretion whether the kid goes back in there. I have no authority for that. I mean, I put kids back in with concussions. I did. And that's like I could be responsible for a kid really getting severely injured, because the second concussion while you're playing that game, it could be, mental illness. It's no joke. And as much as I love the game, it's like, this is a serious thing. I don't want checking eliminated, because what it does for these men and women. I mean, my daughter, Cecilia Messner, she is the most aggressive lacrosse player you'll see. And her buddies, Dylan Green and Neely Nicholson, are the most aggressive players you see. And they're all going to be pretty high caliber athletes. My daughter just committed to Columbia for lacrosse. Awesome. And the other 2 are getting recruited heavily. It's like, because they had that little hockey in them, and they're just, they're out there and they're like, all right, if I can do this against boys when I was 12 and 13, I can do this anywhere. Yeah. That was a little benefit that I didn't really, think was going to happen in this world. And it was really a huge benefit. And also my wife pushing my daughter every day to get better and do this. So yeah, there's something great about it, but there's something so scary about it, which is, we got to look at. We got to shine a light on, and hopefully they're going to take a look at this soon.
Yeah, you can tell you're very passionate about this subject. I have a question, though. Can you tell me about The Family Next Door and Two Anthonys? What are those, and when will those come out?
Those have been out here. My partner, Barry Reese, who we did the Last Gladiators with, he became extremely passionate. He was in a different business. And so we did the Last Gladiators, and he's a fascinating guy. He sold his company for a good bit of money, so he doesn't have to do much, right? But he really became impassioned with documentary filmmaking. And The Family Next Door is a great, it's a great family film. It's a motivational film. I think our next step will be getting that out there to other people to see. But quite frankly, he loved making them. And then we had a couple fundraisers. We raised about $60,000 for, the autism chapter here. It was about this beautiful family, the Lund family, going through. They have two children with autism. And it is, I get emotional thinking about that film because how much they went through and how much they still are going through. Because one's nonverbal and one is just getting a job, getting out there in the working force. But it's, that's an everyday struggle. And it really was, selfishly, it was really beneficial for me to see and film while, I thought I had problems.
It puts everything in perspective, right? It's everything.
Everything was in perspective. And so that film, it should be pushed out like we're starting to push this one out. And then the Two Anthonys film is another fascinating film. So Barry makes these and loves them. This was his next door neighbor. He goes, the Verbal's son, Donnie Lund, he goes, still takes him out every week. He's still really close with the family. And then the next film was called The Two Anthonys. We followed a couple of men. Well, one was a child, one was 12 years old going into high school, and one was a felon trying to make his way in the world in Wilkinsburg, which is one of the poorest communities here in Pittsburgh. And Barry fell in love with all the characters and made this sweet but scary film Part of it's sweet with the young Anthony, and then the older Anthony ends up in prison. In fact, he's going to be out in a month. So we're thinking about shooting it again, getting these guys a couple years after the film ended, because the film's really good. He just hasn't pushed it out there. He just loved making it. And now we gotta push it out there, because it's a real timely movie. And both of the films, there's no shelf life on them. They're evergreen.
Yeah,
so
forever. Yeah,
we're going to start pushing those out. And after October, when the older Anthony gets out, we'll shoot that and move on from there. But we're really proud of them both. And Barry was really instrumental in all these, obviously. But now, I mean, we have a film company and a marketing company, and the carpenter's worst house is always his own. So we got to start getting a little motivated with those two. But yeah, thanks for asking about those, because
are you starting to really enjoy filmmaking?
I do. It's I really enjoy all aspects of it. This one was a little bit weirder with my family in it. But yeah, I do. I enjoy the tinkering with it. I enjoy the editing process. And this one, I did everything. I shot pretty much all of it. There was a couple of guys. Jeff Stick went with me to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and Trevor Young, who's kind of my right-hand guy at Awesome Films. He shot a lot of the game footage. So yeah, it was. I do love it. Don't get me wrong. I think when I'm watching how the whole medium of this world is changing with TikTok, with all these quick formed mini documentaries, it's going to be tough to get people to watch 90 minutes. But that's the one great thing about this one is the kids who are 12 have sat through the whole film, and they love it, and they, it motivates them, and they see that they're not alone. But yeah, the whole world's changing. Part of me just says, and one of the distributors said, "We love your film. We want to make it 60, or no, it was like 52-minute clips." And I was like, that's not how a film works. You know what I mean?
Holy cow!
Yeah, so they wanted to just break it and put 2 minutes out every day, and it was okay money, but it was like, that's not how you get a message across to these kids and to the people who you want to influence on it. But
what platform would that have been for? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just.
I think it was TikTok. I think they wanted to just
okay.
for TikTok, and I think they see that as the future. Some of them just wanted to buy the film and take certain parts of it and put it, social. And I was like, no, let's not do that. So we just sort of self-distributed it and said, let's just do it this way. And that was a whole nother terrible story with the distribution, but we can get into that another day.
I know me personally, I've been watching a lot more documentaries, and I know that they've been talked about more and more as, people are looking for content. So I hope this one gets a lot more eyes on it, because I agree. My daughter and I were watching the Mighty Ducks television series, and she's like, some of those kids look so much bigger than the other kids. And I'm like, yeah, it's because of the 12-year,
and
puberty's wild.
It's wild. And there's one clip, we have a kid who's 6 feet tall. He just goes around and he's hitting these kids clean. But when he hits them, the back of their head hits the wall or the ice, and it's fair. It's all in the guidebook. It's all in the rule book. And this kid's a really nice kid. Emmett Martin's his name. He's one of the best players in the area. But he still is just bigger and stronger. But now finally kids have caught up. And my son, he's still small, but he can handle it now because he's had it for a year or two. He knows how to avoid things. He doesn't think he's he's a god or anything like that, because he's gotten smacked a bunch of times. So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma how big and how small this world is.
So, and I have a question. This very much could be a silly question, but I think about games like rugby that have no pads. Could you ever see like hockey be without pads, and like maybe that kind of shelters it a little bit because they're going to hit less because it hurts more the person actually hitting them? Could that be a thing, or no? That'd be silly. It's
a great question, because these kids' equipment is you're almost indestructible. And I was kind of at the first wave of this way back when. I wouldn't lift in the summers. I would just get bigger shoulder pads every year. So everybody thought I was getting a lot bigger. You feel like you can take on anyone, and you barely feel it. The kids barely feel when they get hit. The only problem, I guess, is the puck, could really cut.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that can be rough. Yeah.
The puck could cut you in the eyes or something like that. But that you made the exact same point that the head coach of Penn State made, so it wasn't a stupid question at all. Yeah, he said maybe remove the face mask, maybe lessen the equipment, because you feel indestructible, and everything's indestructible except for your brain, because when you hit something and that goes against your skull, it's still moving, and you're not, and that's when the real serious trauma comes. And I've had it. Everybody's had it who's played hockey. That's why there's a weird brotherhood with all athletes who go through contact sports. They all feel it, and whether it's rugby, football, wrestling, Australian rules football. We were on an Australian rules podcast for some reason. I don't know how we got on that one, but yeah, they were. It's scary, but it's so beneficial.
Yeah,
and I wish Jean-Claude.
Yeah. Every time I think about head trauma, I think about a guy. I played high school football, and one of the quarterback at the time, his name was Brett. He got hit so hard he forgot who his mom was. His mom came down to talk to him, and he did not know who she was. I was right next to him. It was wild. I was like, we need to get him away from. Like, he's done. Like, this is done now. Like he didn't remember his mom. Like, he was like, who are you? Like, that's not good.
Yeah, and you hear all the stories where something like that will happen and they go back in the game. And it was in your area of football, I'm sure it was really prevalent. Yeah, we got to keep an eye out.
Head trauma is a thing. We got to worry about it.
And I'll tell you, the other thing, while we're talking about this, in practice, a lot of the times it's just me out there with 20 kids. I have a bunch of stuff going on one end of the ice. I can't see anything on the other end. And they'll be, you should have seen what Belli did to this kid. I'm like, oh boy. And then I'm like, are you okay, AJ? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm like, I don't know. Is he? I don't know. I'm the only one here.
Yeah.
So
he's going to tell you he's fine.
They should lessen the contact like they do in NFL and not let you check in practices except for maybe once every 3 practices, something. But there's got to be kind of more of a magnifying glass on it, because all of us are kind of just going with it and getting through it, and where all it takes is one extra guy a game, a little more education, and everybody going in with the same spirit, kind of with you see it in the NFL now. Everybody has the same spirit. They all moaned, don't touch the quarterback, whatever. They all moaned, don't head hit, but it's still a beautiful game, right? Football, there's nothing like it. Hockey's a beautiful game. There's nothing like it. If you're not getting those cross checks to the head, people will still appreciate it and love what Connor McDavid does and all these other players do. So, yeah, there's something we got to do. I'm not sure, but I'm shining a light on it with first checking.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Can you tell everybody where they can find First Year Checking?
Well, since it's 3 geeks, if I have one second here, I'm going to tell you one other. If you guys are really geeks, there's the best goalie, the most famous goalie ever to come out of Pittsburgh was a guy I used to play. We would play late night hockey in Mount Lebanon, and he was so passionate about hockey, and he loved it. But he was also a drawer and an animator and all this stuff. So he drew this humongous portrait of me when I kind of retired from hockey. You can't really retire if you're no good, but it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He went to Edinburgh, and so we're watching television the other week, I guess like almost a year ago now, and Dave Filoni is the goalie from Pittsburgh, who is the most famous goalie ever from Pittsburgh, because if you ever watch The Mandalorian or anything Star Wars, you know who Dave Filoni is, and he's just a great guy, nicest guy in the world, and a goalie too, and all goalies are crazy, and he's not alone.
Yeah, Dave Filoni is not a small name. That guy is huge.
Yes.
He is Star Wars at this point.
Oh, he is, right? It's It's fun. And he unfriended me on Facebook. I must have done something goofy, but I still love him. So you see the film on YouTube. Go to YouTube. Just search First Year Checking, either the number 1 or spell it out first. And that's how you get it. You just rent it there for $3, $4, or whatever it is. And these hockey parents are spending $60 an hour on their kid. It's $4 is a good investment. Maybe we'll get some money back to make another one.
Awesome. I'll make sure I put that in the link. And everybody out there, please follow us